Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh Jeffries video, and in this video I'm going to be restoring this abused iPhone 4 running iOS 5.1 back to almost new condition. I bought this iPhone for $18 off of eBay as iCloud locked and in the parts only section. It looks as though the previous owner never used a case or ever looked after this iPhone. The front of the iPhone is completely shattered with the home button about to fall out. The back, although unbelievably not cracked, is super scratched. The sides of the iPhone are the worst I've ever seen in an iPhone before, with major chips, scratches and marks. Taking the iPhone out of the parcel that I received it in from eBay, you can see that it's wrapped in sort of this bubble wrap. Pulling it out reveals the condition of the iPhone, and you can see that it needs some charging. After a quick charge, the iPhone booted up to what looked to be iOS 5, as I could see the lock symbol underneath some of those cracks. The only problem being it is passcode locked, which wasn't noted in the listing, but also the digitizer doesn't work, meaning I can't touch or move anything with the screen, so that seems to be dead also. The first point of call before I tried anything was saving the ASJPALMS. Now this can be done on the iPhone 4 as it has a boot ROM exploit. Newer iPhones such as the 4S and later cannot do this because there is no exploit available. But considering this is an iPhone 4, I was able to do this even though it was passcode locked. Once the blobs were dumped, I could then give a shot at trying to crack the passcode to the device. Now I used 3 utils here on Windows and basically just ran the passcode crack. Now this only works on iOS 6.0 and below for the iPhone 4 and iPhone 3GS. And you can see here, once it begins, you can see all this text flying around on the screen. Now what it does is it tries every passcode combination from 0000 to 9999. So basically it'll try every possibility and then eventually the code will be spit out. Mine was 0711, which is what it said there on the screen of 3 utils. Now because my screen is dead, I'm going to have to hook up a temporary screen just to test this out and see if in fact the passcode is correct. Typing in 0711, which is what 3 utils told me the passcode was, we're into the phone, and you can see just like that I was able to crack the passcode and get into the device without having to reset and update it. Now I did dump blobs just in case that didn't work and I had to re-restore. I could do it that way, but this is just a bit easier because I can just reset it through settings without having to mess around with any command line sort of stuff. And you can see here it's running iOS 5.1 and is a 16GB iPhone 4. After confirming that the touch now works after changing the display and it isn't something board related, but also being able to get into the phone now, it's now time to restore this iPhone. I'm going to be using a donor phone which has a screen, frame and all the parts inside of it because this phone is quite damaged. You can see here that it is water damaged. Some of the screws are rusty and both of those water indicators are a red color. Surprisingly, the phone still works and has no issues that I could find with the device. Everything was functioning from the touch to the LCD, backlight, all things like that. Like I said before, I'm going to be using a donor phone or donor frame to put this logic board in because of the such poor condition of the current frame and screen. It's much easier to do it this way and can also be a more cost-effective way in the long run. You can see here, taking a closer look at the logic board, there's no indication of rust or corrosion, which is great. Now I actually firstly attempted to put a new screen that I had laying around on an iPhone 4 frame, but I realized that I didn't have a screen that fitted. It was actually for a 4S and not an iPhone 4. A few weeks later, I was able to pick up this complete iPhone 4 just without a battery from my mate Aiden. Huge shout out to him, he gave me a really good deal on this. I'll leave his YouTube linked in the description. He has a massive collection of iPhones, really great guy, go check him out. Now I was able to use this in my restoration because I didn't actually have an Apple display or an iPhone 4 screen in general. There's a logic board already in here, but it's running iOS 7.0.4 and is a 32GB model. The logic board in here isn't the correct one for the frame. It's actually programmed to be a black iPhone 4 and not a white one, so I will be swapping that into a different frame with a cracked black screen for the meantime. I will fix that later down the track, but I will be using this white frame and screen to put in my iOS 5 logic board. So pretty much the same process as before. I've got to disassemble the iPhone itself and just basically swap the logic board over from the iOS 5 one put that in here, and then I'll go ahead and put the logic board that's in here into another frame off camera. But basically that will do it for that, and I'll have a restored iPhone. It's much easier to do it this way because if I was to individually replace all of the parts, it would be more time consuming and also cost a lot more money. So if you get a donor phone, it's much easier just to swap out the parts because you can usually pick them up a lot cheaper than if you were to buy all of those parts individually. Just a side note, when you're installing the logic board of any iPhone 4 and 4S, you need to be very careful when you slide it in at the top. There's a little metal clip. You don't want to get that clip caught on the LCD cable because that can result in ripping the cable, therefore ruining your screen. Now, because this iPhone 4 runs iOS 5, I had to use an Apple branded display. I have had issues in the past where using aftermarket displays on iOS 4 and iOS 5, the phone will appear completely dead. It won't power on, it won't connect to iTunes, it won't do anything else, and simply changing the display back to an Apple one, it boots up just fine. Now, this is a known thing with iOS 4 and iOS 5, so if you are restoring one of these devices running an old version of iOS, such as iOS 5, you will have to make sure to be using an Apple display. Once I reassembled everything, I connected up the battery just to test out the phone, and you can see everything is functional, and it's time to reassemble the back of the phone with a new white glass panel. Installing the two pentalobe screws, and we're almost done. I then had to simply install a tempered glass screen protector on the back and front of the iPhone to protect it from scratches. And this is it, the iOS 5.1 16GB iPhone 4. This has been fully restored into almost near mint condition from a phone that had clearly been abused and never looked after throughout its life. The version of iOS 5 that's running on here is what it would have shipped with when it was purchased brand new. It is its original install of iOS with calls dating back to 2012. I will now wipe the device and set it up new on iOS 5, but you can see just how mint this frame, housing and screen all look together to bring this phone back into near mint condition. This is my second iPhone 4 running iOS 5. I have a 16GB running 5.0.1 with SSH blobs, and this one running iOS 5.1. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the iPhone restoration playlist for more videos like this. Also, make sure you're following me on my social media, link will be in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.